So I've also enjoyed a lot to work with the Star Wars team. So I already asked this once again. Please share your experience with implementing sociocratic governance models if you want in the chat. And this session is about how to safely implement a sociocratic governance model. And this is a bit of the outline. I like to tell you a little bit about me and the force. And then some words about safety. And then I'll guide you through the building blocks of Sociocracy 3.0, which is the Sociocracy method that I use. And then I'll tell you a bit about my blueprint to implement that, the flow of that, and some tips and tricks, a bit of storytelling, and then over to you for your questions. And maybe some cases you want to bring in. And I was wondering if this is recorded already, Jan, just to check. If that...
Yes, it is. Sorry, I should have said that. This is already being recorded.
All right. Great. So about me, I work mostly as organizational coach and facilitator in Sociocracy and organizational development in general. I'm also a personal transformation coach working with voice dialogue as my, the method that I love to use most, but also constellation work and nonviolence communication. I also love to run rituals in organizations, and I host circles. And my company is called Golvenmaken. But very soon I will also have an English website. And I already asked the designer to create the English logo for that. So making waves is what you see here. So my mission in life is to contribute to a culture based on love, life energy, and wisdom. A culture in which we can safely, fully be ourselves. And where everyone is awake and fully present. A culture that addresses what's alive above and below the waterline, in which we are constructive, we help each other, we keep the connection. And where we live and act in balance with nature. And this is what Thich Nhat Hanh said about that. It's very possible that the next Buddha may take the form of a community, like our community, practicing understanding, loving kindness, and mindful living. So, yeah, I go with that. And I also believe that together we can create a culture like that. And just some words about the Force, because as a big Star Wars fan, I always, was inspired by this this invitation, may the Force be with you. But what does it mean? I wonder what it means to you. But to me, it means actually inspired action, being aligned with Source, a channel for wisdom. And I think if we use the Force, this kind of force, we have actually all we need to change the world. And to me, Sociocracy is a way to invite inspired action. And when we use it in an embodied way, like the meditation we just did, it invites wisdom, trust, and understanding, as I think we're all aware here today. And for me, Sociocracy creates this gateway to a new galaxy beyond egocentric, good and evil, and the drama that we're in this world. So if we embark on this journey in a timeless space, and we navigate via attention, truly, we can experience wholeness, compassion, and hyper-constructivity. Because I believe people always respond when their wisdom is invited. If people are given the power to influence or consent, they just come to life. They get inspired. And to me, they use the Force then. So let me check the time. We've been a bit late, but a bit later. Okay. So the title of the session is how to safely implement sociocracy governance model. So about safety, for me, that is not about knowledge or mental concepts. It's not a mental thing. It's really about inviting wisdom, which means embodied leadership, which means that wisdom is not work hard, this is somehow effortless. And it's inviting everyone to come in the state of sage. If you want to invite this, and to me, this is necessary to really properly run a sociocratic governance model, you should bring in these elements as well. Enough silence and timeless space, relaxation, well-being, enough time, full presence and awareness, attention to that. To also always acknowledge what is present above and below the waterline. And empathy and compassion, to always invite people to step into other people's shoes and take the other perspective. It also means you have to surrender to the process and put your trust in the facilitator. And the Agile mantra that we use, good enough for now, safe enough to try, not to go for perfect or your personal preference. And of course, the both and more principle, the core principle of sociocracy, appreciating the wisdom of the opposite perspective. And ask people to reflect on their own behavior and contribution, and also to express that and share that. So to navigate via tension really is something that asks for braveness, right? Addressing tensions while staying in touch with yourself, with the other. For me, radical openness is also important, that you really show up and be honest and vulnerable. And also that everyone is invited to take ownership of your own needs, the radical self-responsibility part. So always when I come in an organization that likes to work with sociocracy, I also bring in nonviolent communication. And my translation for that today is de-armoring communication. Letting go of your mask. De-armor yourself. And I think you're quite aware of the language of needs of NVC. But for me, sociocracy is actually nonviolent communication on an organizational level. So I often bring in this slide, where in Sociocracy 3.0, we work with drivers. So in nonviolent communication on the personal and interpersonal level, we have here on the left, we say what is happening, what do I observe neutrally, how does it make me feel, what below that is it my deeper need, and what kind of request could I make to myself or to the other. Where in S3, we also start from observation, and we describe what is the effect on us as a team, as a group, as an organization, what is our organizational need, and also what is the desired outcome, what is the impact that we're aiming for. So navigating via tension, for me, resistance and tensions is wisdom that has not yet taken a constructive form. It is actually always an opportunity at the personal level, at the group level, resistance and tension, nothing to be afraid of. So we tap into the wisdom in the tension, and we use also, of course, consent decision-making. We qualify, we actively invite objections, and we qualify those. But this is not a session on consent decision-making. But I was wondering, what I've shared so far, how does it resonate with you? If it does. You can leave that in the chat if you like. And thank you for that. I see already a lot in the chat happening. So again, back to the topic, how to implement a sociocratic governance model. So let me go through the basics, the building blocks with you. Because the question actually is how to unlock the wisdom in the system. And I work, as said, with Sociocracy 3.0, which is a beautiful combination of agile way of working and sociocracy, based on flexible building blocks that you can choose from. And with each process, the 7 core principles behind that being transparency, consent, equivalence, continuous improvement, accountability. I'm forgetting 2, empirism, and one that I forgot. Please share in the chat. So what do we want? We want to make sure information and influence flows, throughout the whole system. And in Sociocracy 3.0, S3, we're going to say from now on, we have these 4 dimensions described, right? And today we're going to talk about organizational structure. So let me guide you through that. Why do we want that? Why is organizational agility important? We want to create clear roles and domains with explicit freedom and boundaries, and proper delegation and representation of the whole system that ensures this flow of information, influence, and feedback. So, how do we do that? How we have the building block of the domain, right? And you could say there is in many organizations, there will be a delegator, the management, the board, the CEO, your +1, delegating that area of responsibility and autonomy to you to address a specific organizational need. But in other places, like in co-ops or co-housings, there is maybe the delegate circle, which is the delegator. The point of this is that you check, you have freedom to do things, but you also have to check for consent, for a strategy, for a development plan, etc. That's the delegator aspect in the system. So this domain, you could populate that by one person, then it's a role keeper, or it could be a supporting operational team. Here it's called helping team, or a full circle who runs its own governance and operations, or it could also be open domains or temporary domains to address a certain need that when it's fulfilled, the domain could also, again, resolve. And I use this format of domain descriptions. And it says, let's go over it very quickly. It says the delegator. Sometimes I leave that out, I must say. But it starts with the driver, right? We're going to describe why do we need this domain? What is the purpose? What is the reason of existence for this particular domain? And what is the impact that we're aiming for here? Then we list the key responsibilities. We list the constraints. So the constraints is the dependencies, the things you need to ask for consent for if you want to change something, reporting. Constraints could be many things. It all depends, of course. There's also room for the resources, which could be time budgets, financial budgets, tools that you can use, privileges, etc. It helps to describe this, especially for people who are not familiar with the role or the domain they're going to be working in. And then there is this part for a kind of a profile sketch, the qualities, the skills, the experience, the evaluation criteria, which are very important, and also a term. It says here a review date, but it's, actually each domain and each role, when you start executing it, taking up that role, being part of that domain, there is a moment to evaluate it. And these domain descriptions can be extended with the things here on the right. But I'm always very aware of over-engineering, not to over-engineer too much. Yeah, for me, one page or 1.5 pages is enough for a domain description. So we're just showing here the building blocks, right? So this is very, very simple. We have a role, we have circles, as I just went through. We have the principle of linking, where one representative of one circle, of one domain, will be part, for example, in the governance meetings of another circle, when there are dependencies, when there are links in the work that you do. And this could also be doubled. And a link could be many other things as well. Whatever is suitable, whatever is needed to influence each other in important decisions and to let the information flow. And here is the representative. Yeah? So the person who represents his or her circle. So, and then we have some examples of structures that we could use. And I'm not going to talk about the 3 below, only the 3 on top here. Many commercial organizations have a sort of a pitch model, pitch organization, where they have inner supportive domains with no contact to the outside market or to society, and the outer domains which are in contact with society, with stakeholders outside of the organization. And there's the fractal organization that I know from a previous conference, for example, that Lush uses, which is really interesting for organizations at scale or global organizations, where people in the same role, in the same domain, on a local level, can also connect to people in the same domains on a higher scale, right? Region, country, etc. Then there is this one, the delegate circle, and that actually is the one that I use most. A very simple principle. So in a delegate circle, the representatives represent their circles. They bring proposals that impact the whole system, everyone, or at least more than one other circle. And they report back about the decisions made. So it's back and forth. Back and forth. So effective organizational structure supports the flow of value. It shows the channels through which information and influence flows. It enables collaboration, addresses dependencies, and makes also sure that information is available to everyone who needs this. And it distributes power to influence. And it's a constantly evolving process, this. So a part of, for me, of a governance model is also a transparent workflow, where we have the principles of Scrum, of agile working. I guess most of you know how this works, a Kanban backlog, for example. And you can prioritize it. You can limit the work in progress. There's many things you can do with that. And there's one addition that I always bring, and that is the concept of an inbox, to bring work to other domains. Because in Sociocracy, we distinguish governance from operations. So governance is, as it says here, how do you make decisions about your way of working together? Which agreements do you need? If there's a new tension, what criteria could you think of? What charter do you need as a tool to build future decisions on? Self-governance. And then there is the distinction with just operations, executing, doing the work on a daily basis with constraints defined through governance. So you could also look at it like this. Because I always work with these two types of backlogs. So you have a governance board and you have an operational board. And they're quite different also. So the question where to put a new driver is like this. Do you have a way, know how to execute it? Is it covered by previous decisions? And if not, you can put it on the governance board. You need to make a decision together. You can place it on the agenda of the next governance meeting. And you also have a log of agreements that you made. So how do you do that then? Run that governance meetings. You have this is like a template that I use, but it's a template. So you can adjust it to everything that you need within your organization, of course. There's always a check-in round, a way to arrive and hear everybody's voice. And then there's room for administrative matters, see if there are urgencies, new agenda items, if we can consent to the agenda, if there are still questions about the last report of the last governance meeting, etc. All the practicalities. And then you run the agenda, but you start with the short reports. To me, very important. You can do them in 3 minutes or longer, but this is information that flows, right? Not only influence, but so that we really know what each domain is doing, and we can use collective intelligence to amend, to help the other domains and really know who is doing what. There's also agreements that you can review, but mostly it's been used for processes like consent decision making, so proposals that you bring, and they are also always accompanied by a driver. Why do we need to have a decision around this? Proposal forming, the design thinking brainstorming format of S3, but also role selections. And I often do also peer reviews of domains during governance meetings. So like each domain, each governance meeting, one domain, right? And then for sure at the start, when you start doing governance, you evaluate the facilitator, the meeting, and so forth, and you close off with a check out. So about peer reviews, this is one of my favorite processes. Sometimes I'm in organizations to only do that when they're not part of governance meeting practice. So you invite the right people, a 360 principle, could also be clients or stakeholders. The ones who are clients of the domain. And I'm aiming here, I'm meaning peer review on the domain level, right? Not on a personal level. So you present the domain description, you alter it, you see if it's still right. And you ask the domain keepers to bring forward the strategies they have been using in this last period to execute this drive or to fulfill the needs. And then the role keepers or domain keepers, they start with their appreciation. So it's a very appreciative process. They start themselves appreciating, and then the others, go on and build on that, actually. And you do rounds. And the others bring in one appreciation per each time, So you collect all of them. And then you go over to improvement suggestions, and the domain keepers themselves start again first, and then the others build on that and add to that. And the third step is the development plan, which you can do right away, or you can ask that to bring that and put that on the agenda of the next governance meeting. But you consent to the development plan of a domain. Because it needs to be feasible, needs to be doable. We tend to want to do too much all the time. So the check is important. And then the role selection pattern, where you start to present a domain by going over the domain description. You record nominations and you listen to the arguments, because this process is, well, why you should select someone is it's based on the strength of the argument. That is the way to choose. It's not a minority decision, majority decision, sorry. So you do a first nomination round, and then you stop the process and you do a round of information gathering. And when you yourself are nominated, you respond, right? You say yes or no, or why, or yes, if, right? And then you have a second nomination round, and a nominee is proposed by as a proposal of the facilitator. And then you check for objections. And possible, if you are the nominee, that you yourself can also object, because you still feel, okay, I need some help. I need a buddy, or I need some constraints or a scope, clarity about the scope, etc. So then the last part is really consent decision making. And when you've resolved all objections, you celebrate the one in the new role. Okay. So then we come to the part of how to do this, right? And I like to, tell you about my blueprint that I've been using for the last 4 or 5 years when I implement a governance model like this. So what are the steps? And after that, I'll give you some tips and tricks. So let me get something to drink for a moment. First, you need to make sure that you have a mandate. I'm not going into the detail about how to do that, but you need to have a buy-in or a mandate to start. And then you inspire the community, the organization, so they know what you're going to do. And then you check if there's anything that needs to be acknowledged before you can start. For example, I was asked to implement a sociocracy model, and there was another organizational coach before me, and he brought in holacracy, and it failed big time due to, one of the reasons was that the management was not involved in the delegate circle. And it created a horrible situation. And 1/3 of the company left. So before I come and I can do something to fix this, we need to acknowledge this, right? Reckon what happened, and we did a sort of a ritual. And we really took the time to acknowledge the work the people did in their best intentions, but it was a big fail. And then we could start. So then the real first step is for me to create this organizational drawing circles or an ecosystem. I'll show you some examples of that. And look what domains are there. And of course, you can do that by guessing, or maybe there is already something in place. If it's new, you could use driver mapping as a process, an S3 process, to see what are the needs that we want to address, and you create domains out of that. It can be done like that, done it a few times. Or you just ask people to bring in all the tasks and see what could you cluster in a logic way, and what kind of flow is there. But most of the time, I just take up a flip chart and I start in a sort of guided brainstorm with the domains that we can think of. I'll tell you more about it later. Yeah. And if you have the domains, you start to create those domain descriptions. You could do that plenary together, and that is insightful. But you could also do it in pairs as homework and then bring them forward to consent on the domain descriptions. Okay. Then you fill in the whole system, the linking, and you make agreements on terms for the domains and the roles, the governance time budget, because it's very important to know that this is an investment. Doing governance costs a lot of time. And in many places, time is immediately linked to money. So you better be explicit about that. And then you could see if a domain or circle likes coordination or not. And the evaluation of when to do peer reviews, etc. So those things are very important to consent to. The next step is to populate the domains. And sometimes that is quite easy because people have certain skills and talents and energy for things. But sometimes it's not. And then the role selection process is very helpful. And also often surprising, because why I like the role selection process is because so often we say, you should do it. You are the best fit. But when you do this process and you use all collective intelligence, total different outcomes happen. Very, very interesting to me. Then you set up the backlogs per domain, first on the level of the domain. And those domains then also define strategies and they present them. Often when this is a new model, I ask them to do this in the first governance meeting to check. So these are the strategies we're now going to use as a kind of starting point. Yeah. And then we connect those backlogs into one transparent overall organizational workflow. And we install an inbox per domain. So each domain has a column or a way to, so you can put work, you bring work or drivers or tensions that you feel are not my domain, they're somebody else's domain, and you can place them there. And the domain can pull them in. It's a pull system. And see, oh, this is operational, this is governmental, we need to make a decision on this, or this is not for us. No, we give it back. And when something travels a long time, you know there's something else. So there's a root cause that you have to look at. But yeah, it's a way for interaction between domains. And then you organize the delegate circle. Who is going to be the representative? It could be a rotating role, could be fixed for a certain term, and you install a delegate circle. And then you start to run the governance meetings, facilitated meetings. Just so you also need to see who is the facilitator for which term, etc. And then you do peer reviews on the domain level, as I said before. And here is the whole flow. So I hope I can share also the presentation with you afterwards. So this is everything I've just said in one list. So what are the principles and the tips here? When you draw the domains, so you explore and you find consent on the domains, on the structure that you need. And of course, there's multiple lenses. You could draw the core businesses, but also people need temporary domains, knowledge domains, project domains, right? And the same goes for the level of detail. How far do you want to go? What do you want to put in your drawing? The principle of good enough for now, it is a draft. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's a living document. And yeah, keep it brief. you adjust them. Every peer review is also a review on the domain description itself, right? And you check with reality if what you thought was important and necessary is still part of the responsibilities. Same for the governance model. It's a living system. You navigate by attention to improve it, and at least yearly you evaluate it. And the representatives that you choose, it's really helpful to contract them for a short term, to be really, to make this safe, to step in to this role of representative. It should also be possible to give back your role, ask for help. So it's as many safety as you need to build in your system. And also it's a way to really hand over the ownership. So the strategies, I sometimes see that they are being thought of by the management or top down. No, you, in your role, you are the one who design a strategy. But you consent, you ask for consent on them. So a way to do that is to propose them to the delegate circle. And domains can really organize themselves. It doesn't need to be all in the same manner. So each circle can have a different way of self-organization if they have the backlogs that are shared. Self-governance, if it's helpful and adding value, a domain itself can also run governance meetings. Yes, so linking also, I've been talking about this, right? It often helps to create governance templates, governance meeting templates, right? Because your meeting has different needs than another circle's meeting, right? An inbox. And often organizations are hesitating to start. And then I really say, trust it, the process, and learn by doing and experiment. And also install some sort of buddy working where you could facilitate each other's governance meetings, etc. And also evaluate the whole process. A delegate circle, some organizations do it every week. And others, most that I know of, do it every month. And in the governance meeting, I didn't say that, but you also separate the roles to have a real clear process. And you prepare. The agenda is built in advance, and you send out the proposals a week or a few days in advance. And of course, decision-making, proper consent decision-making is really an adding value if you really learn to do this. And I can't help, but often expertise from outside is helpful, or mentoring. Yeah. So when to start with this domain reviews? You could start after a month or after 3 months when it's a new model, and especially for new roles. And sometimes there are situations where there are monthly peer reviews, to have this feedback really on a high level. You could also experiment with asynchronous way of working, asynchronous consent decision-making, or pre-fill in parts of your governance system. So I like to stick to my promise to make room for your questions, but there is a few more minutes, so I could maybe share a bit of the stories and a few examples. So here, this was a very top-down design company, and then the management became just one of the voices in the delegate circle, and I just saw the CEO switching positions and actually feeling so relieved, that all this collective intelligence was used where it was not before. So it's often freeing also the manager or the leader to really take up his role of the overall accountability, the vision, the mission, etc. Just an example of how are we designing this together, and this often change a lot, right? So over time, new circles come, domains or roles are removed. Co-housing community, where people work in working groups, but there are also people who are not in a group. And how can we represent them? It's quite of a big question, and also very important decisions. For sometimes we want, we work with the delegate circle, but for some decisions we need lazy consent. We need everyone's consent because they impact everyone financially so much. So in co-housing communities, I often experiment a lot with different types of decision-making processes. Here the same. Yeah, this is one team, and this process is not finished because everybody wants to be everywhere. Oh. And actually they need way more governance agreements in this case. I also sometimes draw it differently and build ecosystems. And this is an example where we have domains, but they are linked. Here are the domains linked to projects, and there is a board committee here, and there's actually a lot of volunteers also in this system. And another way of showing it, an ecosystem is this, which has, I don't know if that's a word in English, semi-permeable boundaries. You can come in from the outside without being a team member, and yes, find your place in a domain and come closer every time. Yeah. And this one also has an executive committee, but the most important is the delegate circle here. Yeah. So before we go to your questions, some more brief points. So sometimes it's really hard to take up the role of representative because it feels a lot of responsibility, and you feel you're never able to represent everyone behind you. And it helps to contract or to take a term of, for example, 1 month, and then you can give it back. And I've done that, and nobody wanted to give it back after 1 month. It's still an example I keep in mind. Sometimes it's really helpful to do a 3-day kickoff with the whole organization to really get the domains organized, and to do role selections and to create backlogs all at once. And you have like really a boost and a kickstart. In one co-housing, a really big one, it took us 1 year to start running the governance model and governance meetings. They were afraid, they needed training, and they didn't dare to start. And now when we are started, it's going, people right away, they feel like, oh yeah, this is really working, and it's good enough, the representation and delegation. And we can take in an empty chair, for example. If something else is needed, we can experiment and make it our own, right? Yeah. And then there is places, and that's my favorite, and that's the last thing I'm going to say, where I can also coach in personal leadership. We could work with do the inner work, and we work around shared leadership. And that combination creates what I was saying in the beginning, really showing up, really opening up, and creates more trust in the system. If you also spend a lot of time, if you give importance